Dr. Weil, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
It's great to have you back. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We first connected in 2020,
Remember,
and yeah, and we talked about, it was more general. It was about your journey in integrative medicine and your take on disease prevention. And I'd love to just narrow in a little bit deeper and dive into specific actionable things that are grabbing your attention right now. And so, what are the things that are super interesting to you right now?
well, I'm very involved with our Center for Integrative Medicine and teaching. We're training lots of health professionals in all the things that they didn't learn in their conventional training. So I'm always paying attention to latest developments in nutrition research, especially around microbiome, which is such a hot topic, and the connections between microbiome and mental health, which is a whole new field. I'm also obviously very concerned with the pandemic and ways we can keep ourselves healthy and resistant and our immune systems in good working order. I'm very interested in psychedelics and seeing them become mainstream. I think this is a long overdue and wonderful development.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's get into psychedelics.
Yes.
So, how long have you been experiencing psychedelics?
I first took mescaline in 1961. So I think I was, how old was I? I was born in 42. So, I was 19 years old.
Did I
And
read that was with you and Jimi Hendrix? No.
probably before he, ever heard of them. Anyway, I hadn't smoked pot. My only experience really was with alcohol. But I began taking mescaline, and I was just fascinated by it. I read everything I could on it, and it just seemed to me there was, these were magical things, and that they opened amazing doorways. This was when I was an undergraduate, and at some point I had to give it up because I think if I followed that path, I would never have gone to medical school. And, I needed to just focus on what I was doing.
So this is a I think an important part for folks that don't know what mescaline is or how you
Yeah,
ingest it or what the potential benefits and risks are. Can you just hit that note because I want to stitch it
sure.
to the last comment that you made, which is if I stayed down this path, I might not have,
Yeah.
stayed true to the craft that I've developed.
So mescaline is the active compound in peyote cactus that's been, widely used by Native American peoples as their sacred sacrament. I got synthetic mescaline that was made by a chemical company and the dose was 400 milligrams. There are two families of psychedelics. Mescaline is in one family, which are more stimulants and related to drugs like MDMA and a lot of synthetic ones. The larger family are what are called indoles, and that's psilocybin, LSD, DMT, and all the ones that we're familiar with. Anyway, there's a lot of these that occur in nature. There's a lot that have been made in laboratories. Um, they're around.
And they compare in experience to LSD and but or is it I don't know.
Okay,
Like I
they
really don't know.
differ in duration of action. Mescaline is long lasting, 10 to 12 hours, whereas mushrooms are much shorter, 4 to 6 hours. I think there's a lot of overlap in the experiences. And I think the experiences are also very much shaped by set and setting, by expectation and environment. So, that often overshadows the pharmacology of the drug.
So I want to give you a framework that I'm working from, and
Yeah.
I think many people in our community are working from. But then quickly, I want to get to that stitch, which is that little hint that you're like, if I went too far, I don't
Yeah.
know if And this is actually, let me give the hint, and then I'll give the framework. Is
Okay.
that where I get confused is the difference. So it's born out of the current interest for me is the microdosing and some of the mental health properties that are so I'm like, okay, it forces me to challenge some of the taboo nature of it, challenge some of the fringe science, some of the historical baggage that comes with words like LSD and mescaline and whatnot. So So that's one piece. And the culture is, I don't know, there's a challenge with that, the baggage that it comes with. Okay,
Hmm.
so let me just pause there. And then I hear learned scientists like you and many others saying, wait, hold on a minute. Let me share some of the science, some of the experiences, some of the benefits, as
Hmm.
well as some of the risks, I'm sure. Okay, but this is where I get concerned in my own head, right? Is because I come from a world where folks that I deeply respect have challenged me to to have a set of practices to be present
Hmm.
and to work from the inside out and to do that with as much discipline as we possibly can. And then, listen, I understand what I'm about to say has an inconsistency in logic because everything that I consume from an external standpoint, food, nutrition, whatever, is an outside in mechanism that I'm using for health. And why am I not interested in taking ketamine or fill in the blank? So there's my inconsistency in logic. But then you touch that nerve for me when you're like, yeah, if I would have stayed down that path, I probably wouldn't have gone into medicine. And then look at what you've given to the world by your studies of medicine. So this is where I get knotted up, and that's why I really want to have this conversation with you.
Okay, well, I have to tell you that a lot of my psychedelic experiences later really influenced my philosophy of medicine, and that a lot of the field of integrative medicine I owe to insights that I had on psychedelic experiences. For example, I really saw how powerful the mind body connection is, and that things in the body and things in the physical world can be changed by changing what's inside your head. And that's a very powerful thing to experience. And for me, psychedelics are one of the ways of doing
So what is happening when you take, and I know that each strain is has a different interface and a
it. Yeah,
different
but there's a pretty common neurological pathway here. And when I was first using this, we had no idea how psychedelics work. And now we understand that this works on a particular type of serotonin receptor in the brain. So we really understand a lot more about the mechanisms. That's also interesting that there are many people, and I say myself as well, have had experiences that are very similar to psychedelic experiences without taking substances. At least after I've had that, those experiences. One was being in a Native American sweat lodge for the first time. Another was fire walking. Another was witnessing a total eclipse of the sun. I mean, these were powerful consciousness altering experiences, I think equivalent to the power of experience that I've had with psychedelics. So maybe these are working on the same brain mechanisms.
Okay. So I recently came back from, it was a 3-day noble silent meditation, 16 hours a day of meditation. And twice now, and I've been on handfuls of them, but twice I have gone into a place where I've seen the floor that we're in, like it was like a hall, if you will, like a large room. And I've seen the floor breathing.
Mhm.
It's the only way I can quite describe this matrix type feeling. And so is what what
All
what
right, let me pick up from there.
come on, doc.
I have had numerous experiences on psychedelics where I have really experienced the consciousness of what I thought of as inanimate things. I can remember being up a canyon in Arizona, and I could see a basic energy flowing through my body, and the same energy was in the rocks that I was lying on, and in the mountains and in the plants. There was some universal, basic, self-aware energy that was in everything. That was a very powerful insight, and it put me at great odds with the conventional scientific view that consciousness is just something that incidentally arises out of brain chemistry and ends when we die. I don't believe that.
So it literally, when with psychedelics, people call it, going on a trip. I
Mhm.
was tripping.
Okay, I
Okay.
believe.
So yeah, but there's no external interaction, but I definitely have had those experiences. And you're saying with this is the thing about the mind, is that I don't know what's in yours and you don't know what's mine. There's a limitation from the words
Right.
and symbols that we're using. But that idea that what you just described, I go, yep, yep, I believe that. So it, literally, when you, with psychedelics, people call it, going on a trip. I was tripping. Okay. So yeah, and but there's no external interaction, but I definitely have had those experiences. And you're saying with this is the thing about the mind, is that I don't know what's in yours and you don't know what's mine. There's a limitation from the words and symbols that we're using. But that idea that what you just described, I go, yep, yep, Yep. Okay. And then, okay. So that being said, there is unlocking that takes place, and you said it's working on the specific type of serotonin receptors. What does that mean? And I want to be careful of you and I not nerding out too much in the specific interactions, but just in general, so that we can move the conversation forward for many people.
Okay, well, there are brain mechanisms that are stimulated by psychedelic drugs, and it's very likely that these can be stimulated in other ways, and maybe prolonged meditation is one of them. But these may have a common pathway in the brain.
Okay.
But psychedelics are very easy. They don't require work and they don't require hours of meditation. So for many people that is an easy doorway to go through. However, the psychedelic doesn't guarantee that you'll have that experience. It really is how the experience is structured. And this goes back to set and setting and why there's such a need to have guides, as these substances become more available.
Okay. Just for clarity for folks that aren't familiar, set is your mindset, and the setting is the environment that you're in, the people
Right.
you're
And
with.
set is your expectations, both conscious and unconscious. And
Mhm.
those can be influenced by the expectations of the people you're with, as well as other factors. So it's complex, and the combined effects of set and setting can actually reverse pharmacological effects. You can give a stimulant to certain people under conditions of set and setting when they'll fall asleep. And you can give a sedative to people with conditions of setting when they become alert and stimulated. So there's huge room for those non-drug variables to shape the drug experience.
That's so it when you really sit with placebo effects
Yeah,
and nocebo effects, and you say,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's happening here? Well,
yeah.
it's the set and setting. It's the mind essentially that
Absolutely.
is,
Yeah,
creating. It's a bizarre
right.
insight that we have not unveiled, like how that mechanically works. But okay, so let's drill down one more level. Okay, so we've got this basic conversation that psychedelics can open you up to new insights that are difficult, if not sometimes impossible. I would leave space there from uh, non-medicinal interventions
Yeah,
like meditation. Okay,
yeah.
and to your point, 16 hours, 3 days, 5 days, like that type of work is heavy
Tough.
lifting. That,
Yeah, I,
yeah, you've been there, sweat lodges, and I don't know if you've done some of the noble silence stuff, but that's just heavy lifting. So
yeah, yeah.
so let's go one more level down. The difference between microdosing and a full experience, if you will. And I don't know
There's
if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah, a huge difference. That microdosing, you don't get the alterations in perception. You don't have visions. You don't go out of your body. You don't experience rocks as conscious. For some people, you just feel kind of energy flowing through the body. There are many people, I have not had this, but many people say that it makes them more creative, enhances imagination. A lot of people are doing this now, but I think this is a totally different thing from taking macro doses.
Okay. Is there a benefit to wellness if you have anxiety, depression, and PTSD, whatever it might be, OCD? Is there a benefit from the full expression of the chemical or the what's the right word here? Not chemical.
But the dose of the
From the
substance,
dose, yeah, for the full dose, or do you say, "No, no, no, for mental health, it really is better for microdosing as a general rule?"
I don't think we have good data on the effects of microdosing. We have a lot of testimonials from people, but we don't have really solid data yet. With macrodosing, there's accumulating research on very dramatic benefits, and this is like a single experience or a few experiences, especially for drug-resistant depression. Very dramatic effect on PTSD, on obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's being well documented. I think it's just a matter of time before these are made therapeutically available for those kinds of conditions.
What type of timeline are you anticipating or thinking?
Well, I think the way Oregon has moved, it's very likely that these will be available within the next year. I think at the federal level, it may be 3 years away.
And Okay, so when we think about Zoloft and we think about, Paxil or some of the
Not
medicinal.
very good, not very good medications. There's increasingly research shows that you can't distinguish these from placebos. Even in very severe depression, they're just not good drugs. They don't work very well. So we really need better methods for treating depressive disorders. And this, I think, has just tremendous potential.
Okay, I want to take a quick break here to talk about Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix is a personal style service for men and women and kids that is designed to evolve your taste, your needs, and your lifestyle. So for me, the process of shopping, I don't know, it's just a little daunting for me. I need help. I have a sense of what I like to wear. Like I have a sense of what appeals to me. But then as soon as I'm online or in a store, it starts to get a little overwhelming. I don't know what happens. Like there's this massive gap for me. This is where Stitch Fix comes in. They have a team of expert stylists that do the hard part of this. And so they go to work finding items that are, I don't know, perfectly tailored for your needs, hand packing every piece of your unique style, your size, your budget, all that good stuff. So here's how it works. First, you take a quick quiz and to help them learn more about your preferences. Then, when you schedule a fix, their stylist will send you 5 pieces that fit your style, your size, your price range. And from there, you keep what you like and then easily return the rest for free. No subscription required. It's that simple. So I highly recommend that you give Stitch Fix a shot. So sign up today at stitchfix.com/findingmastery to get the $20 off your first purchase. You spell it just like it sounds. Stitch, Stitch, fix, Fix. Stitchfix.com/findingmastery. This is a limited offer, so be sure to purchase within 2 days of signing up. And Finding Mastery is also brought to you by Gravity. If you're listening to this podcast, you know that recovery is one of the key pillars to performing and living your very best. Recovery oftentimes begins with great sleep. So if you're looking to improve your sleep, I think we've got a great product for you that you're going to really enjoy. Gravity is the original weighted blanket. Now, it's the only blanket that has science that they've really researched how it impacts a night's sleep. So it works by stimulating the feeling of being hugged. So this triggers the release of relaxation-inducing hormones that help just to relax you, chill you out, help you recover, help you down-regulate, and then eventually, if it's right before sleep or napping, to help you drift off. I've loved using Gravity as part of my evening routine. I use it, obviously, right before I go to bed, but my family also loves it using it when we're just relaxing on the couch. Check them out for yourself and see why Gravity was awarded the best weighted blanket of 2021. So punch over to gravityblankets.com/pages/findingmastery and receive 15% off your purchase when you use the code findingmastery at checkout. Again, that's gravityblankets.com/pages/findingmastery and be sure to use the code findingmastery to take advantage of that offer. And with that, let's jump right back into our conversation. So one of the best practices in psychotherapy is there's obvious reasons where there's a higher level of care that's needed for some people where traditional talk therapy is not able to
Right?
help. Okay. But then if medication is the next or is part of that decision tree, best practice is medication alone is not the answer. That medication plus is a best practice, and that's talk therapy or exercise, da 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 da. So
Yeah, a list.
yeah, a whole list of things.
Right.
And then so what is you have a strong reaction to traditional psychotherapy, psychotherapeutics.
Yeah.
What just unpack that for one level, because then I want to spin back into what you're finding from the psychedelic research.
Okay, so I think the antidepressant drugs are just very poor, not great efficacy and also significant toxicity. The anti-anxiety drugs are terrible drugs that I think almost have no use at all. They're highly addictive, interfere with cognitive function. We have a few psychiatric drugs that are useful, as the ones to treat bipolar disorder. I think those are useful, but the ones in most common use, they're just not very good. We need better methods. And the promise of psychedelic therapy is it can be just a single dose that produces very lasting effects if the experience is structured properly.
Okay, so what are the downsides? And which ones are you talking about? Are you talking
Well,
about?
psilocybin, LSD, I would say, and MDMA for PTSD. I think that these are the ones that are most being looked at the moment, and good research being done on them. And I think the only downsides are missing out on the potential because the experience has not been properly structured. That you haven't paid enough attention to set and setting. You don't have a good guide to guide you through the experience.
Do you guide people?
No, I don't do that. I mean, I have done that informally in the past, but no, I don't do that. However, our center is developing a curriculum to train health professionals in psychedelic medicine. There's a big need for that.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering what your position is on
Yeah,
that. That seems to be one of the more powerful components, you know.
absolutely, absolutely
Yeah.
necessary. And there are institutions now beginning to train people, so all that's good.
Okay, so not to be a reductionist,
Yeah.
but to ask a reductionist question. If you had to lay a bet, would you lay the bet on the psychedelic macrodose or microdose?
I think on the macrodose. I mean, I don't know enough about microdosing. I've done it myself. I haven't been motivated to continue with it, and I haven't. I don't know enough about it. It maybe has benefits, but I think these are very different from the effects we're seeing with macrodoses.
And are you more interested in? It's funny when you say MDMA, LSD, I go somewhere else, right? And like, right, I go, oh, okay, so we're going to go to a party, we're going to listen to some music, like I go somewhere else, and I know that you know that, and that's that kind of baggage that I was talking about. And listen,
I hear you. I hear you.
yeah,
And,
I
and,
have the
and
bag.
people are still going to be doing that. I mean, even if this becomes legitimate for therapeutic uses, there are going to be people who are using these for parties and using them recreationally. And okay, that's their business. That's fine, but they may be missing out on the potential. But let me tell you something else. I'm very enthusiastic about the possibilities of these for physical medicine, not just for psychiatric medicine. And
Okay.
you may have heard me tell some of these stories because I've put them out there in the public. And some people have made fun of me for these, but these were very real, powerful experiences. When I was 28 years old, I was starting to practice hatha yoga, and I thought this would be a good thing. I was trying to meditate at the same time. There were some postures I had great difficulty with, and the one that I had most trouble with was the plow, where you lie on your back and try to touch your feet behind your head. I could get my feet within a foot of the floor, and I had excruciating pain in my neck. And no matter how long I tried to do this, I couldn't do it. And I was on the point of giving up. I just thought my body was too old and stiff at 28 to do this. And in the midst of this, I took LSD one day with friends. It was a spring day in Virginia, countryside, everything beautiful. I mean, fabulous. I just felt incredible. My body was totally elastic and light. And I thought, gee, well, I'm feeling this way. I ought to try that. So I lay on the ground. I thought I had a foot to go, and my feet touched the ground. I couldn't believe it. So I kept raising them, lowering them. I mean, it was just delightful. The next day I tried to do it, and I got within a foot of the floor, and I had excruciating pain in my neck. But there was a difference. Now I knew it was possible, and I was motivated to continue to practice. If I had not had that experience, I don't think I would have continued to work at it. And to me, that is one thing that these substances can do. They can show you possibilities that you might not have believed in, and then it's up to you to figure out how to maintain that. Now, let me tell you one other, okay?
Yeah,
Around
no,
the same
I love it.
time, this was also on LSD, different occasion. But again, feeling great outdoors. I had a lifelong cat allergy. If a cat got near me, my eyes would itch. And if a cat licked me, I'd get hives where it licked me. So I always avoided cats. So in the midst of this LSD session, when I was feeling at one with everything, a cat jumped into my lap. And I had an immediate reaction, defensive reaction. And then I thought, gee, this is silly. So I started petting the cat and playing with it. I had no allergic reaction, and I never had one ever since. I mean, instantaneous disappearance of, a lifelong allergy. I mean, that's amazing. And why not? I could open a Dr. Weil clinic for allergy relief, and I would give people once a week. They'd come in and start with a full dose of the psychedelic, expose them to the allergen, and then you cut down the dose, and at some point they're getting nothing. They're just getting a placebo, and they wouldn't know when you did that, and they would have unlearned the allergy.
I see why people have made fun of you. But you know what? I love it because it is actually, you're speaking to something. Let's take it out of psychedelics for a minute. But let's go to a classic example. Roger Bannister,
Yep,
broke the 4 minute mile,
right.
and it took people seeing that to go,
Absolutely.
oh, it's possible.
Exactly.
So it happens in other modalities other than the experiential nature of what. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's happening all the time as well. You see somebody do it's proximity learning as
Right.
well.
Yeah, yeah,
Mirror learning, the mirror neurons in our
yeah.
brain. Yeah. Okay. So if you let's go back to the non-reductionist approach here, just for clarity. If you were to pick one of the is it 4 or 5 psychedelics that we've mentioned so far, which one are you gonna lay your bet on?
Well, I'd say two. One is mushrooms, psilocybin, and the other is MDMA. These are quite different. I mean, MDMA is not a classic psychedelic. It doesn't cause the visual perceptual changes, but it's very heart opening and produces a kind of centering effect that's really amazing. But I think those two are the ones that are closest to getting approved and will be out there and available for therapeutic use.
So if I'm gonna go to a party and I'm gonna take some MDMA, and what is the dosage of that versus the dosage that you would say in a therapeutic setting somebody ought to have?
It's probably the same. I mean, if you take too high doses of MDA, it's not pleasant. It's a stimulant that causes your jaw muscles to clench, and not pleasant. So you want to stay in the right dose zone.
And is that individual based on unique chemistry, of the
I
person?
think the dose of that is pretty constant from person to person. That most people have a pretty uniform reaction to that.
Okay. And you're talking about bruxism,
Yeah, but yeah, well,
the
it
grinding of the
definitely
teeth?
causes tightening of jaw muscles, and that can be really annoying. That's from too high dose, and then you can't sleep, and you feel drained the next day. You don't want
This is why you'll see folks that have like pacifiers. It's almost like a
that.
a little like calling card, like, yeah, I'm one of them. Yeah.
Okay, now also one other area that's worth talking about is the potential of psychedelics to give people spiritual experiences. Now, a lot of spiritual teachers and religious leaders are very upset by people that say that. They say that these are artificial experiences. They're not like genuine spiritual experiences. I think that's nonsense. I think that, and even at Johns Hopkins now, where they're doing research on psilocybin, they are documenting, changes in people's view of themselves and how spiritual insights. I would recommend looking at, and I want to tell everybody to do this, go to YouTube and search for Housewife on LSD. This is an amazing video. It was made, I think, in the late 1950s at a psychiatric center in Los Angeles, where a psychiatrist gives a very straight housewife a dose of LSD. I won't tell you what happens, but it really shows you the possibilities of what these can do.
Okay. I mean, I hear ayahuasca like every other weekend in LA for the last, 6 years. It's like it's
I can't believe I spent a bunch of years in South America looking at psychedelic medicine and shamans and herbal medicine. I took ayahuasca a number of times with shamans down there. If anybody had told me, this was in the 1970s, that ayahuasca would be available in every street corner up here, I would not have believed it. There was Vogue magazine a few months ago had a cover story on psilocybin. Town and Country magazine, of all places, a few months ago had an article titled "Why is everybody smoking toad venom?" In Town and Country magazine. I mean,
yeah.
truly, this is becoming a mainstream phenomenon.
Well, it certainly was like probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I think, the global pandemic has kind of screwed up my mapping a little bit, but it, I would look at some of these folks talking about it, and they're like folks that are, there's two, I'm going to oversimplify this, but there's folks that are going to push to the edge no matter what.
Right?
And you can kind of spot them for the most part, like just the way they carry themselves, the way they think about things, sometimes the way they dress. Like you
Yeah.
could, like, okay, you're getting on the edge. And it could be anything, oh, whatever. Fill in your imagination there. And then there's the very straight laced,
Mhm.
like, no, I want to try something. So they want to be part of something. They're interested in it, and it's like a big deal. Okay. And then I'm watching this woman describe her experience, and she goes, yeah, and then, he held my hair the whole time I was throwing up, and they said I was throwing up for 12 hours. It's like, wait a minute, like, how is this happening? So um well, your experience with ayahuasca, are you saying, no, I'd still stay with the mushroom class?
I my experiences with ayahuasca were a lot of vomiting on the ground. uh,
And you
I
and you
had.
don't remember that. That's not like part of your conscious memory.
Oh, it definitely is part of my conscious memory. But,
Okay, all right.
but there were, on one occasion, there was nothing much to make up for that. On another, once I got through that, the visual um, changes were really interesting. I mean, I saw lots of psychedelic imagery. I don't know that I took anything away from that as I have from, some other experiences I've had. But I think there's certainly is potential there. Okay, now I'm going to say something that also may be far out, but I really believe this.
Wait, hold
Uh,
on. Hold on.
okay.
I can't wait to see what you're going to say or hear what you're going to say. But like, Andrew, I really want. I have high respect for you, and I really want you to be successful in the way that you're sharing this narrative, because I'm the type of person that, like, I push in so many directions in my life, and I haven't pushed here. And so even in this conversation, when you get to the edge of a cliff
Yeah.
and you look down, and it's like really exciting and dangerous, and there's the heartbeat in the
Yeah.
stomach. So I feel that even in this conversation, so I really want,
Well, I
because
would say that way that you feel increases very much the probability that you would have an amazingly positive experience with these things. That approaching them with that mindset, where because your anxiety about them, your fear about them, that's a measure of how seriously you take them. That
oh
you
yeah,
realize
well,
there's a potential there to change you.
it's actually the excitement,
Yeah.
like it's the excitement part of it. The anxiety is like, this is dangerous and I love it. Right. And that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
But it feels like there's a door, to overuse the
Yeah.
metaphor, that I haven't really knocked on it. I've been looking at it, but I haven't knocked on it. And so, okay. So that being said, is like, I really want your unique voice to carry, because of who you are, where you've studied, what you've studied, the credibility that you have. And I'm also nervous about, like, okay, well,
Okay. So listen to what I'm going to say.
yeah, here we go.
Okay, our world is in pretty desperate shape. You don't have to, in any direction you look, things are really bad out there, and they've gotten very significantly worse in recent years. Um, I don't know any way to turn things around except through a global change in consciousness. And when I look out there, the only thing that I see that has the power potentially to do that is psychedelics. I think that if enough people have the right kinds of experiences on psychedelics, it can change global consciousness in the direction it has to change. The experiments that are being done at Johns Hopkins documenting spiritual insights that people have, a lot of people have that kind of experience I just described to you, about really realizing that everything out there is conscious, that your mind is continuous with other things. For one thing, that makes you much more aware of our interactions with the environment and much more motivated to do everything we can to keep us from going in the direction that we're going. That's just one example. I think if enough people had these kinds of experiences, we wouldn't be seeing these mass shootings that are happening and getting worse every day. Seriously, I believe this is the one thing that has the potential out there to turn our society around.
Okay, so let's take that, and let's see if we can wrestle with something here. This is philosophical for sure. And so I've got a first principle that I work from,
Yeah.
that everything another person needs is already inside them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me unpack that for just a moment. Is that they don't need me. They
Mhm.
don't need they don't need um, external evidence that they're okay. They already are, right in this moment. And so there's this principle that I'm working from, that with incredibly high regard for the other, that it's already in you. And let's see if we can partner and unlock it, is like you inviting me in to help you with it, but it's already in you. Okay. So, so that's the framework that I'm working from. And this is saying, no, 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 you need something outside of you. And I get the logical inconsistency because I do need, and you need nutrition and. So can you wrestle with that just a bit?
Yeah, I think the experience that you have when you take a psychedelic, it is coming from within you. My first book was called The Natural Mind, and that was the whole point of it, is that these states of consciousness are inside us, and all the drug does is trigger them or release them or allow them to express themselves. So the magic is not in the substance, and that's a mistake a lot of people make that get into dependent relationships with these things. It's your potential, but you may not discover how to do that without some trick. Look at that example I gave you of the yoga posture. I mean, I would have been stuck there with my feet a foot from the floor forever, and I would have given up without that
Yeah.
experience.
So sometimes I read books and it's a good book. I like it. And I'm reading it and I'm like, oh, this is great. And then when I put it down, it's gone in there somewhere, but I
Yeah,
haven't put it into any action.
yeah.
And I wonder if you can just illuminate that idea, like if somebody were to have a macro dose or an experience, and then it's like, oh, that was good, but it doesn't materially change. And I'll use another framework. People go to a synagogue or a church, or and then they have nice words, and they walk out, and they're flipping me off in the parking lot. And I'm being glib, here, but can you talk about that? The kind of surfacey washing over experience that happens, or is it always quite enriching in the way it's like,
No,
oh,
I think I
geez.
see people who pack these experiences away in a box, and it doesn't, influence the rest of their lives. But I think that's the whole challenge: is how do you, when you see people who change their behavior, their perceptions following an experience like that's remarkable, and I think that potential is there. I think that also depends on how the experience is structured and the guide that you have.
Okay, I want to take a quick little break right here to talk about Haya. Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk that growing kids are not going to benefit from. So that's why Haya was created, the pediatrician approved super powered chewable vitamin. Haya is made from a blend of 12 farm fresh fruits and vegetables and supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals known to help support a healthy immune system, energy levels, brain function, mood, teeth, bones, and more. It's non GMO, vegan, dairy free, allergy free, gelatin free, nut free, everything else you can imagine. Haya is designed for kids of all ages, and it's sent straight to your door. My 13-year-old son loves it. And they're also taking care of the environment as well. How about it? Your first month comes with a reusable glass bottle. And then after that, every month, Haya sends a no plastic refill pouch of fresh vitamins, which means, they're just not good for your kids. It's good for the environment. They got the whole thing worked out here. I love what they're doing. And we've worked out a special offer. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, go to hayahealth.com/finding mastery or enter the code finding mastery at checkout. So it's Haya Health, HIYA Health, hayahealth.com/finding mastery, and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. And Finding Mastery is also brought to you by Athletic Greens. I started taking Athletic Greens just about a decade ago. I love what they've done. They've got 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. So I use it first thing in the morning. I put a scoop in, mix it with water, shake it up. It's my original source, my first source of hydration for the day, and it's jam-packed with good stuff. And so I'm interested in a nervous system that works well, an immune system that is on point, high energy, that's balanced and smooth. I want to make sure that my recovery is on point. They've got all of this locked up. So right now it's time to reclaim your health, arm your immune system, with this very convenient daily nutrition. There's no need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. And right now, they're giving us a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D. And then they're also giving us 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So I want to encourage you to, again, to punch over to athleticgreens.com/finding mastery to check out what they've got going on. I think you're really going to love it. And with that, let's jump right back to our conversation. Let's flip over really quickly to the downside. One of my cousins called me and he's like, "Hey man, I need help. I took too many, maybe. He told me earlier in the week that he was gonna, use some mushrooms. And he's like, "Hey man, I'm really messed up. I'm in front of your office. Can you come down here?" And it was like 5:30 at night, or I'm sorry, 5:36 at a Friday night. I was not near the office, so I pop over there. He's nowhere to be found. He goes, "I'm in front of your office." I'm like, "Dude, you're not here. I'm telling you, and I'm free." So set and setting was off, or could it be his set and setting was right, but there was just a
Well, it could have been too high a dose. That's a very common problem. It could be, if you take a high dose of LSD in a New York subway on a day when you're feeling anxious, the likelihood is you're not going to have a spiritual experience. If you take it a appropriate dose in a supportive natural setting in the company of people who know how to guide these experiences in the right direction, you're much more likely to have a positive experience. On a physical level, these substances are, I think, the safest drugs we know about. I mean, you can't kill people with LSD. Almost every drug we use in medicine, the lethal dose is not that far above the dose that we use therapeutically. You can't calculate a lethal dose for these psychedelics. So on the physical level, they are as non-toxic as you can get. The dangers are psychological, and those are totally related to set and setting and can be managed if they're used appropriately.
One of my friends, she's female, went through some hard times, and she was like, "I need a reset." So it was an ayahuasca reset. It was really tough times for her. Her husband died early, tragic, in front of her kids. I mean, you can just imagine, they're beautiful little 12-year-old kids. And so this was a really hard time in her life. And for 2+ years, she battled, and she documented her experience. And so it was ayahuasca. She had, a guide and, a person that was going to take care of her. And then at the last moment, no, you'll appreciate this. So the guide could tell that she was really quite anxious. And she goes, "Okay, everyone, we're going to start with a very small dose." And then she gave it to everybody. And she says, "You're probably not going to feel anything, just a very tiny dose." It was a sugar pill. And then my friend freaked out. My throat is closing, so it was like, it was very clever what she did. And, so she's like, "It was sugar." She's like, "Oh my God." So it really just settled her down, like, wow, my mind is like off the chart in anxiety. So I share those types of things because, have you had those, or are yours always bliss?
No, I have had some really frightening experiences, which in retrospect had to do with, I took them in the wrong circumstances and I should have known. But here's a story you'll like. When I was in my undergraduate days, when I was just starting to experiment with mescaline, I knew there was one occasion, there was a party of undergraduates, and someone had gotten hold of some LSD. This was probably in 1961. Most people had never heard of LSD, and they never heard the word psychedelic. And they gave this, unsuspectingly to people, was put in some drink or other. And when these people, or about 12 of them, felt the effect of the drug, they thought they were getting food poisoning. That's how they interpreted the physical sensation of the drug. They had no framework in which to interpret what was happening to them, and that's what they felt.
How is it working? Is it the pineal gland? Remember that conversation
Yeah,
about
sure.
like that's the God center?
Yeah.
This was, and it's been disproven obviously, but is it working? Like, what are the structures that it's working on?
It's working on connections in the brain between nerve cells that are mediated by serotonin. certain pathways there. That's
And
stuff
that
we've discovered in recent years.
we know that from MDMA. I think we've known
It's
that.
true. It's true of psilocybin, and it's true of LSD as well.
It is. Okay. So course correct me on this. This is like from the party experience working
Yeah.
with folks that like high doses consistently of MDMA. And the idea, this was like a narrative that I've just picked up on, is that as high as you go, there's an equal crash that you experience.
Well, MDMA is a more of a stimulant than these other drugs, and any
Mm-hmm.
stimulant that you use, the energy that you feel, it's your energy. It's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
been the drug forces your nervous system to give it up. So when that wears off, you're left with an energy depletion. And if you've taken a very high dose, you're going to feel pretty wiped out. When the drug wears off.
Okay, marijuana, really quickly.
Yeah,
Have
not
we?
a psychedelic. This is a very
No,
different
correct.
category.
Unless there's like, I don't know, some of the marijuana that's on the market, people are like,
Yeah, yeah, right.
So when you were growing up in the 60s, like marijuana was 5% THC. Is
Yeah,
that close to being accurate
or less, I would say.
or less? And
Yeah.
now it's like 80, 90.
I can't imagine. I mean, I used marijuana a lot in my 20s and 30s, and I really have not used it at all since then. It's just not something that agrees with me anymore. But a friend of mine, a medical doctor in the Bay Area, he's an oncologist and is an expert in cannabis medicine, sent me samples of products that he got from a medical dispensary, and he wanted me to try them. And I said I was a little wary of this because I haven't used any, and I'm probably sensitive to it. One of them it was like a little syringe filled with some sort of oil or tar, and
Mm-hmm.
it came with a very professionally printed brochure telling you how to use this, and it was particularly for pain. And it said to start with an amount the size of a grain of rice and work up from there. So I took a piece the size of half a grain of rice, and I was told to take it at bedtime. I did. I went to sleep. I woke up an hour later in full-blown delirium with hallucinations as intense as any I've had from taking LSD. I had no equilibrium. I couldn't get out of bed. I had a burning thirst. I couldn't reach for a glass of water. I couldn't call for help. And it kept increasing over the next 4 hours. And, when is this going to end? I had to use all of my meditative strategies and breathing techniques just to stay here and now. I was really angry when that subsided. First of all, I'd say for a full 36 hours afterwards, my balance was off. And I thought, this said to work up from that amount. I took half the amount, and I'm thinking there are probably people walking around taking this stuff and driving. I mean, it was a really powerful, and disorienting drug.
So to that story and to my point, like, are we better since we've legalized marijuana?
I think in some ways, that there is definitely therapeutic potential to marijuana, but there's a lot of individual variation of response to it. Some people can smoke pot and before bedtime and fall asleep, and others smoke it and they are alert and wakeful.
Mm-hmm.
But I have colleagues who deal a lot with chronic pain syndrome, who say that the availability of therapeutic cannabis has totally changed their life, that they can prescribe far fewer doses of opioids, and they've gotten many patients off of dependence on opioids by using cannabis preparation. So that stuff's great.
When you think about the future, so we've traveled. Thank you for traveling with me on this call or in this conversation. When you think about the future and you think about psychedelics and you think about wellness, you said earlier that you can't imagine a more powerful way to shape the
Mm-hmm.
psychology of the planet. So can you paint like a 3-year arc, like what you think is going to happen in the next 3 years, or maybe even
Well,
5 years?
I think psilocybin and maybe LSD are going to be available for treatment of certain cases of depression, anxiety, MDMA for PTSD. I think that'll be legally available. I think there are going to be more and more people experimenting with these things, either medically or non-medically. I think there's lots of questions out there about, are corporations going to try to take this over? Are people going to try to patent these things? Is this ripping off indigenous knowledge? And, there's a lot. I don't know how all this is going to play out. There are people trying to come up with synthetic analogs of these natural drugs. I don't know how they'll work. Anyway, lots of questions. It could be very chaotic. But I think I really think the general trend is going to be good for our culture.
And right now, ketamine is my understanding.
Not a
Ketamine is
psychedelic. It is not a psychedelic. It's unrelated to psychedelics. It's a
okay.
dissociative anesthetic related to PCP, and it's being used as a placeholder. So people have these clinics and using it to treat depression, but they're counting on the legal availability of the true psychedelics. So it shouldn't be confused with that.
Okay, that's a good distinction, and it kind of came out of, maybe I've got the narrative wrong, but as a horse tranquilizer, and now
Yeah.
with a smaller dose, there's a dissociative experience where people talk about like not being able to move, but then having like access to their spirit animal, like
Well, what I hear is that it can be very effective for treatment of depression, but that the effect doesn't last, so that it has to be repeated frequently. But
okay,
it's out there, but really it is being used as a placeholder until psychedelics become available.
so if somebody wanted to be with a trained professional, ketamine is legal, but some of the other things that you've described that we've talked about are not. So how does this actually work if somebody
Well, I
wants
think
to
there's
take
a
a
big
step?
underground in psychedelic medicine. There are therapists who are using it. There are untrained people who are using it. Well, you see the ayahuasca stuff that's going on.
Mhm.
So all this is in a technically these things are illegal, but they're out there and people are practicing it.
Where do you want to point people to for deeper research or an understanding?
Yeah, I would say there's an organization called MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Study. It's maps.org. That's a good source of information. There is a group called PRATI, PRATI, that's the Psychedelic Research and Training Institute. The California Institute of Integral Studies in the Bay Area has a psychedelic training program. So, those are some good places to start.
Okay, and then last very technical question here is, we didn't hit on addiction. And
Mhm.
you talked about some of the dangers, that we can't find a lethal dose of these. And then you kind of slight hint that there's a psychological aspect to it that could be risky. And I think you're talking about a
Bad trips.
bad trip. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. But are you saying, or is the
I think,
research clear on addiction?
yeah, these have very low addictive potential because if you try to take them frequently, the things you're looking for disappear very quickly. So I have never met people who I would say are addicted to psychedelics. You just can't take them that frequently.
Do you crave them?
No, in fact, everyone expects me to be using these things all the time. I can't even remember the last time I had a macro dose of a psychedelic. I don't feel the need to do it anymore. I feel that I got what I needed from them, and I don't feel motivated to use them anymore.
Gosh, I could go on forever with you. I just want to say thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate your position in the world,
Yeah.
and
Thanks.
you've really earned that, I guess is a way to say it. Like, thank you for what you've contributed for overall human wellness. And
Please watch that YouTube video of
yeah,
House on LSD.
okay, I will.
And
I will do that.
maybe that will encourage you to take a step and open the door.
Okay, all right. And then where do you want to point people to
Well, two
support?
places.
Like,
One is
yeah.
my website, drweil.com, drweil.com, and also the website of my center, which is integrativemedicine.arizona.edu.
Okay. And if there's one book,
Well, I would say the one that's probably most relevant here is The Natural Mind, my first book. And another one I wrote after that called From Chocolate to Morphine, which is about all psychoactive substances, both legal and illegal. And it's a good book.
Andrew, who do you look to? Like, if you have who's your wisdom counsel?
I think I follow my inner guru, and I always have. It's like I trust my intuition and my inner wisdom, and I've always done that.
See everything you need. It's
Yeah,
already it's
all
already
inside.
inside you. It's
I
inside. Yeah. Okay. And if there's one takeaway, let's be uber crisp on this takeaway. Okay.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that you would hope people take away from this conversation, what would that be?
Well, I think we had better get with it. I think there's a real possibility that we're going to put ourselves out of business unless we really change our ways and change our consciousness.
Doc, I appreciate you. Thank you.
Good to talk to you.
Pleasure.